Good morning. This is Dr. Daria Brzezinski with Children Come First. Today we are going to visit with Jean Warrington, director of the Montessori School in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And Jean, hi, are you with us?
I'm here, Daria.
This program is dedicated to talking about children, education, and many of the aspects, different models that are involved in the educational process. And I know that you are the director of the Montessori School in Wilkes-Barre, and I'd like you to give us a little bit of background, if you will, on yourself, because I really don't know. How long have you been with Montessori?
Well, I've been with Montessori since my oldest child was 4, and I got into it as a parent, as many people do. I was looking for a high-quality program that would help my child develop to his fullest potential. And when I saw this program, I just saw instantly that this is what I wanted for my children.
Okay. Where were you trained in Montessori?
Well, first of all, I was a teacher and a social worker, so my personal background was seeing children discouraged in school, and often discouraged very early.
You were in a traditional school?
Yes, I was. And I knew there was something better. That children have so much hope and promise, and they love to learn, and their parents want the very best for them, and somehow our schools were not succeeding with them. So when I came here with my child to Montessori, I wanted this for him, and so I became involved as a parent, and then I got more serious, and I took the Montessori management training in New York.
And you became, is it the American Montessori Association?
Yes, it is. That's the national organization that unifies about 3,000 or 4,000 schools and about 40 training centers across the country. There's also an international Montessori Association that was started by Dr. Montessori herself.
In Italy?
Yes,
Can you tell us a little bit about Dr. Montessori and her philosophies? I know she wrote The Absorbent Mind and many, many other books.
Well, she was a brilliant woman.
She was also the first female medical student to graduate in Italy.
That's right. At a time when women were not encouraged to do anything in math or science, she insisted on going to engineering school, and then later decided it was going to be medical school. And everyone tried to discourage her, but she was very strong-willed, and her mother supported her. So she went to medical school in Rome and was harassed, and she was forced to go to the anatomy lab at midnight when all the other students were finished, and they played pranks and harassed and scared her. But she got through it, and then her interest was taken by children. She saw children who were really not well cared for at all, and her first work was done in an asylum for children who are real castaways. I mean, now we would say these children had a learning disability, or they had, a difficult family situation or whatever. But back then, the children were just put in a back ward. And so she started her work with them, and she worked with several other, renowned physicians who had developed much of what she started with in her approach. And she got these children to learn. And at the end of a year or two, she had these children from the asylum pass the state examinations, and they did very well. And that just really caught the attention of the authorities.
I can imagine. They were flabbergasted at what she did. Now, her work was based on, I can't remember the studies of which physician. Do you recall that?
Sagan.
Right.
And it was one of the Swiss physicians she was working with.
And what is different in her philosophical premise than a traditional school?
Well, back then it was very different. She believed that children could all learn, that every child could learn, that they needed to be active in their learning. Young children especially need to move around, they need to work with their hands, and they need to have very high expectations. Now that has become much more accepted now. So you look at the work of John Dewey or some of the major educational philosophers, and and she's much more in line with them now. But about 100 years ago, it was radical.
In Montessori's perspective, with the movement work and children moving around the classroom, first of all, let's start with what ages did she address herself to?
Dr. Montessori worked with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds primarily.
Oh, that was it? Just 3, 4, and 5-year-olds?
Well, then she started to do a little work with elementary children, but most of her research was done on primary, early childhood.
All right. Now, she worked with. Did she work with poor children?
Well, she did.
Or
first,
normal children, traditional.
She worked with children in the hospital first, and then when she graduated, these test results were so astonishing that a group of landlords in the inner city of Rome called her, and they said, "We're having an awful time with these kids. They're tearing up our buildings. Their parents are working or they're absent, and these children are just little hooligans. Let's see if you can do something with them." So they gave her 50. She was about 23 at the time, right out of medical school. They said they gave her 50 children and a basement room in the housing project, and told her to go to work. And she made all these materials herself. I mean, she worked day and night, and what she was trying to do was give these kids hands-on work that would capture their interest, that would help them concentrate, help them be coordinated with their hands, help them cooperate with other children, and be engaging for them. And so over the course of a few years, she was very successful with these children that everybody else had written off, because she respected them, she gave them real work to do, and she expected a lot. And so from then on, she started to work with more normal kids, but she started with the forgotten children.
Now, you talked about Maria Montessori's expectations being high, and that's probably one of the most characteristic flaws in American traditional schools, is the fact that our expectations are lowered. We, in fact, at Earthheart have looked at the McGuffey reader from the early 1800s, and we equate the first grade reader with a fifth grade reader of today. So our expectations of children have dramatically declined. How do you, in the Montessori classroom, elevate those expectations? What kinds of things do you do?
Well,
you don't have traditional textbooks.
We do in the upper grades, yes. We use them as reference books mostly. I think what we do primarily is we meet the children's needs. We are very much based in child development. Maria Montessori was a student of human behavior. She was one of the first child developmentalists, and she said you've got to watch children. You have to observe them and let them guide you. You can't just have a program that you give to everyone the same, because children are not the same. They learn, they have different learning styles, different rates, different personalities. So if teachers are very careful observers of each individual child, and then they have a wide variety of learning materials that the children are interested in and enjoy doing, then you catch the interest of everyone. So these children are motivated. And that's got to be number one. In Montessori schools, children want to learn. They want to be there. They believe they can do it, and because of that, they succeed. And I'm afraid in many schools now, it's a society-wide problem, is our kids are discouraged early. They don't really have a useful place in the economy. They don't have a real useful place in society anymore, and the learning doesn't have real meaning for them.
Now, you stated that the children, the teachers, for example, must become observers of the children, and I personally received my Montessori certificate from St. Nicholas in England, and we spent, which is no longer in existence, but we spent 2 years in observation, writing down everything we saw that a child did. And I personally believe that that was probably the greatest experience of my life, just observing in silence the kinds of things the children did. Do you believe that teachers need to be have, dramatic events like that in order to be able to learn to listen to children again? I mean, what kinds of things do you do with your teachers?
Well, it's an expectation that every day the teachers stop what they're doing and watch to judge if it's effective. I mean, it's just, you can't just do the same thing every day, every year, with a group as though they're all the same. You've got to be tuned into children. And that's certainly part of the Montessori philosophy and training. And we do a number of, we structure the school in a way that teachers can do that. They're not just so rushed and so harassed. I mean, teaching is an extremely difficult profession. And in many classrooms in America today, teachers really aren't allowed to, they're just not able to give the children the care and the attention that they want to give.
You have many kinds of activities in the Montessori classroom around the room for children. Are there certain areas and categories that those activities are arranged in?
Well, let me describe it a little bit. And I know it's a little hard to understand without seeing it, and that's why we encourage visitors, we encourage parents to come and look, come and watch. For our youngest children, we want them to develop coordination. So we have all kinds of activities with their hands. We want them to develop concentration. There are just so many factors in our society now that distract children, that conspire against their learning how to concentrate, which you must do to learn to read, to learn how to think. You have to concentrate. The youngest children have work, and we call it work. You could call it play. It's really the same for a child, but it's very purposeful. For example, washing the baby. It's very simple. It's an 11-step process. The child first undresses the baby and then goes and gets water from the sink and brings it back carefully, not spilling, and fills up the little basin, and then takes the top off the soap and puts a little soap in there and mixes it up, and then puts the baby in and starts to scrub the baby. And she scrubs and usually talks to a friend or when she's doing that. And then when she's finished, she needs to carefully dump that water back in the sink and dry everything up and put the clothes back on the baby. Now that's 11 steps. That's teaching a child how to concentrate, teaching a child that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to any job, and giving her the sense of accomplishment and pride in having done something herself.
Well, it's not only that, it's teaching a very personal set of skills, how to put things away, how, most children are in this hurried society, do not have the opportunities, are not given the opportunities to learn the step-by-step processes and skills in life. So they wonder why we have teenagers who can't pick up their clothes or, make their beds, because we never teach those skills. The Montessori classroom, in fact, teaches daily skills, doesn't it?
Yes.
What kinds of skills does the young child learn, for example?
Well, he has to learn to coordinate his body, coordinate his hand and his eye. He needs to develop concentration. He needs to develop a sense of order. Young children have a great need for order. They want a predictable environment. They want a consistent routine. And I'm afraid that parents are so busy with two incomes, double shifts. It's very...
Well, not only that the single-parent home is in more disarray.
Well, it's just so hard for adults to give the children that very serene and predictable environment that they need. So the Montessori classroom gives the children the practice to develop the skill of concentration. They also need to develop independence and self-reliance. I mean, so that they're not so dependent on teachers and parents telling them everything they need to do. It's a complex world, and they need, from the beginning, to learn how to be self-reliant and resourceful people. They need to cooperate with others. That's a very important life skill, and we teach that quite deliberately, showing them how to work with each other, how how to speak directly to others. If their feelings are hurt, they learn how to say that directly. They learn how to say what they think, what they mean. So these are very basic life skills that children need.
We are listening to Jean Warrington. She's director of the Montessori School in Kingston. This is Children Come First, 7:50 a.m. on your radio dial, WAAT. We are here every Tuesday from 10 to 11 a.m. And right now we're talking about Montessori philosophies, and the activities in the classroom. This is Dr. Daria Brzezinski. And Jean, you were talking about the kinds of skills that children learn in the Montessori classroom. Give us some. I'm trying to have you allude to different the specific kinds of activities, for example, that would show a 3 or 4 year old independence. For example, I know you have boards with clothes on them where they learn to tie and fasten and zip and those kinds of things. What other kinds of specific kinds of activities would you show a child?
Well, one very simple activity in the classroom is food preparation. We have children as young as 3 cutting up bananas with a little plastic knife, or paring an apple, and slicing a carrot or celery, putting cream cheese on a cracker, and they work at that quite deliberately and with real purpose. And when they're finished, they take the little tray of food they've prepared around and share it with their friends. So they have the sense of a job well done, and also of being a contributing member of their society.
That's certainly a vast difference from our fast food culture. You are giving them a kind of a skill that, for the most part, most parents don't have opportunity for their own children, eating at McDonald's every night or some fast food restaurant. So you are showing them literally the cause and effect in terms of food preparation. What other kinds of activities would the children have? I mean, I would guess that would be self-reliance. What kinds of cooperative activities are there?
Well, when they begin to learn the academic skills, say math, for instance, there is a whole array of hands-on materials that make it very clear to children what the concept of number and quantity is. So, for instance, we would have a game of two young children would spread out a little rug on the floor so that we could see that was their space and no one else can walk on their rug or interfere. And they might lay out the spindle box, and then they have these nice carved wooden spindles, and they have to fill each tray that's marked 0 or 1 or 2 up to 10, and they together they do that job, and they get that accomplished. There are
How about the rods and the I can't remember what they're called, the long the rods that they use to measure distance?
Well, yes, there's a work that I think Maria Montessori herself devised this one, called the red and blue rods. To get a child to understand the concept of number, we use materials that make it real obvious. So for instance, 2 children will choose to do that work, and they will put a rug out on the floor, and then they will walk across the room together and start bringing back the rods. And the first one is a 1, and it's about 3 inches long, and that's red. And then they come back and they get the 2, and that's about 6 inches long. And then they set that next to the 1, and then they go back again and walking across the room and bring back the 3. And by the time they get to the 10, this is a very long rod. And they lay those out, and they can see for themselves 1, 2, 3, and they can see what that means. And they've also accomplished a job together. And the other children look at that and admire that, and then they take that back and put that work away. So it's very deliberate, it's very it's carefully done, and the children have a real sense of satisfaction in their learning and their doing.
They also are taught, now those rods, you don't tell them 1, 2, 3 initially. You have them just measure the rods. Is that correct?
Yes, they get the experience first of the quantity, and when they understand
They kind
that,
of feel and intuit it rather than have a name for it.
well, it's very concrete. They feel it. Yes, they get a physical experience. So that goes in, because that's how young children learn. They learn through their senses and their body first, and then we tell them what the name of those quantities is.
How do you approach reading? What kinds of activities do children receive in order to approach reading?
Well, it starts very early with something as simple as sorting. For instance, we might have a basket of silk fruit or stuffed fruit. So there might be 2 apples in this big basket, and 2 bananas and 2 strawberries and 2 cucumbers. And the children have to match them up. Put the 2 apples together and the 2 cucumbers together, and they do that, and they can see that that's correct, and they feel proud about that. Then the next step is a picture of a cucumber. And you put the photograph of the cucumber next to the model cucumber, and you see that's a representation, and you see that goes together. Then the next step is the word cucumber. So the children are understanding that words are representations of real things. Montessori is very heavy on phonics, but it's not phonics drill, it's actual practice with small objects. So there might be a basket of a number of little objects, like maybe a little pig and a little pot and a little bat and a little can. And then the child will pull from a box wooden letters like K. The C is K for can. So he'll put the little model can there, and he'll get the K, the A, and the N. And so he will be spelling out phonetically the word for that object, can. So there are all kinds of games like this. We call it work, that the children go through to understand the concept of letters and the sounds of the letters and words.
When I was trained in England, I had 2 very, very older women who taught me. I swear they were both 60. And one of the most dramatic moments of my training was when they brought out a little book, a children's book, probably a primer level, and they passed it around the room. Now I looked at this book, and I opened it up, and the book was 50 years old. And after we passed it around the room, they took it in their hands and informed us that this book had been in their classroom for 50 years.
Oh my.
This was a prime example of how they taught children respect. They were to respect the books, they were to respect the materials, and that was probably one of the most dramatic lessons I had in respect relationships. How do you teach children respect for property and for themselves in the classroom?
Well, respect is the cornerstone. Respect and love the child. The way we start that is that the teachers in their training, and Montessori teachers are intensively trained, in their training, they have to make all the materials that go in the classroom. And it takes time, lots of time. So the teachers so thoroughly understand these materials that the children are going to use and have made them with their own hands that the children see that and they respect the work of their teachers. So that's one very concrete way, that the teachers handle the materials with great care. They share them with the children, and they help the children understand that these are precious, and we have respect for ourselves, respect for each other, and respect for our work. So again, it's taking the time to show children what's right. The children are always treated respectfully. We never yell across a room. We never raise our voices to the children. We get right down at eye level. The children are taught that they can't yell and demand attention. They can't interrupt. What they do is they come up to the teacher and they tap her on the shoulder, and she'll generally put her hand on their hand, and won't give them the attention right away. They need to wait a minute respectfully until the teacher is finished, and then she will answer their question. So the whole classroom is a respectful society. these are habits of character that we just believe are essential. Children need to have a respect, first of all. They need to have self-discipline. They need to develop self-confidence. And if you lay that foundation, so these are respectful, caring, conscientious children, then the learning comes much more easily. They're also safe. It's so important that children be safe at school. They need to feel loved and cared for and safe. They know what's going to happen, and many children in school are scared, or they're unhappy, or they're anxious, and they're using a lot of their energy just to defend themselves. You can't learn when you're anxious and defending yourself. You need to be relaxed and trusting, and then learning happens really pretty naturally.
Jean, we're about finished with our first half hour here. Would you do me a favor and give the people in our listening audience your phone number in case they'd like to ask you any questions about Montessori?
Oh, I'd be happy to do that. Yes, any interested parents or teachers or anyone in the public would be very welcome to call us, Wyoming Valley Montessori School. We're in Kingston, Pennsylvania, just across the river from Wilkes-Barre, just down the river from Scranton. And our phone number is area 570-288-3708.
Do you have a website?
We do. It's wvms.org.
Okay. We are speaking here with Jean Warrington. I have a friend named Jean Waddington, and I knew I was going to do that. Jean Warrington, who's with the Montessori School in Kingston, Pennsylvania. This is Dr. Daria Brzezinski. We are here with Children Come First for children of all ages. We're here every Tuesday from 10 to 11 a.m., WAAT 750 a.m. on your radio dial here in Scranton. And we bring you information about education, prevention, health, children, families, and whatever kinds of issues that are all related to children and children of all ages. We are looking at models today, different models of education, and the model we are looking at today is the Montessori model, started by Maria Montessori in Italy at the last turn of the century, about 100 years ago, and just becoming popular in the United States today. Unfortunately, I wish we had more popularity in the past, but we'll talk about that in our next half hour. Again, please join us for our second half hour while we go to break. This is Dr. Daria Brzezinski. Children Come First.
750 a.m. on your dial. We're here every Tuesday
Thank you for
from
listening.
10 to 11 a.m. And we'd like to tell you a little bit about our sponsorship and who sponsors us here.
Children Come First with Dr. Daria Brzezinski is produced by Earthheart Foundation with offices in Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New Mexico. Children Come First is underwritten by CK Auto Parts with stores in Moosic, Scranton, Pittston, and Kingston. You can visit their website at www.ce